Welcome to Book Talk with Kara. And today, my guest is the delightful and wise Rachel Hauck. And we're going to talk about her new book, Meet Me at the Starlight, which is coming out at the beginning of July. And this one is so fun. It takes me back to my childhood and lacing on the heavy pairs of roller skates and going around. Although I do have to tell you, last summer when I was at Estes Park, I still have it. I can go around and do those backward roller skating and doing the turns and twists. So how did you decide to make this one a roller skating book, Rachel?
Well, that actually, I do have to attribute to a friend of mine, Beth Vogt. I knew I wanted the Starlight. So this idea is about 6 years old. I knew I wanted a town called Sea Blue Beach. I knew I had this place called the Starlight. And all along, even from the 8 year old, that's probably more like 8 years old, whatever. I had the character Harlow Hayes as a supermodel who had lost her job because she had gained weight. And I couldn't figure out what the Starlight was. So one day Beth and I were talking and she goes, "What about a skating rink?" And it was just ping. I knew it's a skating rink. We'll do
I
it.
love it. I love
I
it. And it just, I can see, all the lights flashing and the music blaring and
had
everyone
the
having
mirror
fun.
ball going around and yeah.
Exactly. It fits. So when you were growing up, did you spend a lot of time at a skating rink?
Yeah, I was did the kid thing. So I was a kid in the 70s, and then I was a teenager for the big boom of roller skating and disco in the 70s, the late 70s into the early 80s. So yeah, we had a skating rink in Tallahassee that we were at every weekend. I had my own skates with the blue fuzzy ball, and I was a pretty good skater. I could skate backwards pretty well. I could do on the couple skates, I could do little dance moves if I had a good partner. I could not learn to shuffle. I never learned that. My brother was amazing at the shuffle, where all the guys would skate like just like this close apart, almost like the Blue Angels flying together. And they had this little move that they would do. So I think I might try to master that someday soon, but I still have my skates in my closet. They're crazy. They need new wheels. But yeah, I spent a lot of time at the skating rink.
That was so fun when I was at Estes Park YMCA and they had the skating rink and my kids, a couple of them have gone to one here in town, but it closed for a few years and then reopened. So it's not something my younger two kids have done.
Oh,
But I
wow.
remember so much doing that growing up in the 80s. That was just something that we did. And then it's like it's kind of gone away and it's starting to come back, I guess, this nostalgic move. But it's more than that for the characters in your book. It's like this symbol of so much more. So how did you come to that? Your books always have this like deeper layer, the thread of theme and symbolism. Did you know that going in, or was that something that was revealed as you were writing it?
Well, I always knew the Starlight had to stand for something. So that was why I had to wrestle with what was it going to be. And as we brainstorm as authors, we go, well, oh, how about this? And you go, I've done that. I've done that in 3 books. I can't do that again. So I couldn't do a diner because I've done that. And I love diners though. It's just like diners are like a community place. So the Starlight became a community place. And then also for everyone to know, it starts in 1930, but it goes through various decades. But the contemporary story is set in the 80s. So kind of at the end of the roller skating phase. As I developed the Starlight, it just really became a symbol for almost community and family, even church, because um, it's where everybody went to be safe. It's where they were there, they opened the doors when the hurricanes were coming through. They fed people during the Depression. They put up hobos and people wandering through who had no place to go during the Depression. It became where people grew up and built friendships. And so that's really in a lot of ways what we think the church should be like. And so, um, yeah, they even had a revival service at the Starlight. It also became a symbol of everything that the character Tuesday stood for. That was her family.
I love that. And you've always got this thread, this really strong kind of supernatural element, but often it's kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
So, how does that show up in this book? If you can do it without spoiling it for people, because there's that supernatural. Sometimes it's really a fairy tale, but there's always this supernatural element to your books. So, how does that show up with Meet Me at the Starlight?
Okay, so for readers who read my True Blue Royal series, there's 2 books in that. There's a character, Emmanuel. He's kind of a legend in my fictionary country called Locked in Land. He shows up also in at the Starlight. In fact, an image of him is painted on the wall. And so, of course, the Starlight's kind of this big tent-like structure with, with the octagon type walls and panels. And because also I had to figure out, how do I have a skating rink in North Florida coast in the 1930s? Wouldn't it be hot as blazes? Because you're probably not going to have air conditioning. I don't even know if you had electricity in North Florida in the 1930s. So they have these panels that raise up to let in the air. And it was a lot of fun trying to develop what that was going to be. But the guy who built the skating rink is an ancestor to the characters in the True Blue Royal series. He crashed on the shore, which I'm not giving anything away. That's just kind of the genesis of the idea. He crashed on the shore, and he ended up staying. A freed slave, so it's late 1880s. A freed slave rescued him. They became best friends. They built the town together. But he loved to roller skate. So probably in the early 20th century, roller skating was starting to become a real pastime for Americans and Europeans. And so he decided to build a skating rink.
I love that. That is so fun. And Emmanuel is such a great character from that earlier series.
I forgot about that. Let me add that real quick. While he was on the beach bemoaning his situation, Emmanuel walks by and kind of just, as God will often do, just give you that look like, all right, buddy, grow up. I got this thing under control. Next thing you know, Malachi's reaching for his shoulder and saying, come with me, the storm's going to get worse. So yeah, so Emmanuel is that kind of God breaking in to our everyday life character.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does through that series. So it's fun that you pulled him in. Now, you said that Meet Me at the Starlight was an idea that you'd had for 8 years. So why did it become that book that you had to write at this time?
Oh, that's a really great question, Kara. And actually, to be honest, I think it's about 6 years. Well, I had the idea and I pitched it to my publisher, and then I got the idea like in an afternoon, boom, for Fifth Avenue Story Society. And everybody was like, oh no, let's write this one. So I wrote that one, and then I took a break and wrote more royals because readers had been asking, are you going to write any more royals? In fact, I still have people asking me, when are you going to write Scotty's story from the True Blue Royals? And I'm like, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But then I went back into traditional publishing and I wrote The Best Summer of Our Lives because that story at that time was really noodling with me and I really wanted to get it told, get it out. And then there we were like, okay, what are you going to write next? And I'm like, oh, going through the idea file and thinking, I don't know. And a lot of times I don't go back to the idea file. I mean, I had that idea in 2010. That's not going to work today. And so those characters and the Starlight wouldn't leave me. So that's why I decided, okay, let's work on this. And it was pulling this together, pulling that together, changing the characters up, changing names. Harlow Hayes is the protagonist in the 80s, and she's named for my niece, my great niece, actually, my niece's daughter. And when she named her Harlow Hayes, I'm like, okay, that's got to be a character in a book. So
I love it.
She's named for a real life person.
I love it. And it's always fun to hear the genesis of how stories come at different times because we all have that, that book that you put together a while ago and it's been sitting out there and then it's like, oh, now I can write it. And then there are others that we put together that never see the light of day. The proposal just sits out there and you're like, maybe I'll get back to it, maybe I won't. But sometimes the timing's just right and you get to come back to it. But getting all those threads and pulling them all together, that takes a lot of work and it's effort on the back end. So what's your process like when you're going, okay, I've got this idea and I've got this idea, and now somehow I have to braid them all together?
Yes, that's a really great question. Well, I use the story equation by Susie May Warren, which and then I just start dreaming. That's the inspirational part, right? You just have to start making stuff up. And then I can get caught on, but there's stuff I know that I don't know that this story is going to need. And that can kind of make you paralyzed sometimes. But I say, nope, let's just keep writing this story. Let's just keep focus on this story. So I knew that Harlow was going to be a supermodel whose heart got broken. Then I had to really layer into, well, what exactly happened to break her heart? And how bad can I make it that she would totally throw up her career and just start eating food? She had never been allowed to eat food that she wanted because her mom had her in this track since she was a young preteen almost. So she was like, this is her sense of rebellion. So she just started eating and she gained weight. And of course, in the modeling world, that doesn't fly. So how was I going to deal with her? And then who's the protagonist? And usually the first thing you do is something kind of fun, like a contractor. You love seeing the guy in the dusty jeans and the plaid shirt with his cap on backwards walking through the scene. He's always a great hero. But I'm like, that's kind of done. What else can I make him? I love hyperbole. I love blowing it up, as you guys know. So I love royals. I love singers. I love actors. I love kind of like the life that we can't run in. I can run into a contract. I got a contractor living next door, a great guy, but I don't have an actor or a prince living next door. So, I mean, I guess technically Tony's a prince living downstairs, but like I want to look into a life that I don't normally look into, and I think that's fun for the readers. And so then it was figuring out Matt's going to be an actor. Well, he's an actor in the 80s, so he's probably one of those brat packers with Emilio Estevez and Rob Lowe. So it was just kind of dreaming, and then how am I getting him to this little coastal town, Sea Blue Beach? And then Tuesday walked onto the page. She's the historical character, and she just was amazing. I really had to work at not letting her take over the story. We talk a lot about, we like strong female characters, we like strong heroines. And then sometimes I read stories about that are supposed to have strong heroines, and they're just, in a way, not nice. And so for me, she was super loving, super enduring, super patient, able to speak her mind, but strong in that way. But boy, oh boy, she bellied up and took care of her family, took care of the Starlight, took care of the town. And so I had to bring all these characters together at the Starlight. And so just dreaming it up, doing the research. One fun fact was I interviewed 80s supermodel Kim Alexis for Harlow's character, and that was super fun to talk to her. And I had met her at a book event once before, so it was fun to reconnect.
That's so fun. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Rough assignment talking to a former supermodel.
I know, right? I know. She was really great. And because I had done a lot of research, but there was one thing have you ever had this happen? There's one thing I cannot find out. And of course, I can fudge it, like how many people are going to actually know the inner workings of a New York modeling agency. But it bugged me that I couldn't figure it out. And so she confirmed all my research, but the one thing that I really needed to know and some details that I really needed that really made Harlow's life look real, she just dropped like gold. It was really fun.
That's awesome.
I
love that. Oh, that's so cool. So you write a lot and you've been writing for a while. What's one thing that has gotten easier the more that you've written?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Not a thing. I'll tell you what, knowing my process, and also knowing you're always going to hit that phase where you go, oh no, this isn't any good. This is so boring. I'm the worst writer ever. That all kind of gets easier. You don't do that anymore. And I'm really, to be honest, with the Lord's help, not waking up with the deadline panic anymore with, oh my gosh, there's so much to do and I don't know what I'm doing. They're going to hate this book. Because early on in my career, I was at a writer's retreat and two authors just in casual conversation talked about how they turned in a book and their publisher said to them, this is not publishable. And at that time, I thought that was probably the most devastating thing anyone could have ever said to me in the business. And so there was, I think, this subtle, like, don't ever let that happen to you. So that's part of the reason I work so hard and I try to go deep and try to really connect my stories and my characters. And because actually that's fun. But I think that's gotten easier. Like, your process, you're going to figure this out. And with this book that I'm currently writing, that was one of the things that just kept showing itself to me over and over. Just keep writing and the story will reveal itself. Just do a little research, keep doing your research. The story reveals itself. And I was starting to really love just telling the story, just having fun with the story, throw all the craft and the rules out, because those are the things I think, Kara, they're like muscle memory. Though the craft and the rules and the way I tell a story, that has probably gotten easier. Like it just happens. This is a scene break. This is a chapter break. Oh, look what I just wrote. That applies to that over there. Oh, okay. Now I know where I'm going. The trajectory is right. So I think that part has become easier, but wanting to get better, we were talking earlier about getting better, growing, wanting to get better, reading authors go, man, that was good. the way
Yeah.
they phrase. And I can get lost in the phraseology and the turn of words and the words being strung together. I can get lost in that. And I'm like, let's back up. Let's look at the story.
Yeah.
More important.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's such an interesting way to put it because the book that I'm editing right now, I'm on the second round of the macro edits. But because it's a true courtroom drama, and it's the first one that I've written that's a true, like John Grisham, Lisa Scudolini, it is a courtroom drama. I was trying
Cool.
to, yeah, and so I was trying to change the pacing of my chapters and do it more like a Randy Singer pacing. And I tried that and I was like, nope, my chapters are just they're 2000 to 2500 word chapters and I just need to just go, that's my pacing. And I knew that, but I was like, I'm going to play with that. And I like, nope, that's just muscle memory. They just wanted to stop at that 2000 to 2500 words. And that's what my readers are going to expect. And it didn't impact anything. I could still keep the tension going. But I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to play with this time. Why?
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 Yeah.
You know?
Why?
And so I was like, yeah, muscle memory. It's
That's
just,
yeah, just do what works. I know. I think I was talking to somebody once, and they said, "Well, your chapter should be this long," and I'm like, "My chapters are never that long." Oh, like Susie Warren does story math. All her chapters, she does 20 chapters. Every book, 20 chapters. So each chapter is roughly 4 to 5,000 words. I do roughly 30, 32 chapters. I'm not,
yeah.
whatever it takes kind of thing. But man, I'll stop at about 2,500 words every single time. What, 10 to 12 pages? Every single time, just the way it
Yeah.
is.
And mine tend to be 40 to 45 chapters. And it's
Yeah.
because they're 2000 to 2500 words. And so it just depends. And it's just like, it's just the way it goes. It doesn't matter if I'm writing historical or suspense. That's just my pacing. And so I'm like, okay, I tried it. Didn't work, at
And
least
what
not for that story. So
I think in Starlight, there might have been a really short chapter, and my editor said, "Do you want to just combine these?" And I was like, "Nope, that needs to stand on its own. It's just,
yeah.
it is what it is."
And every once in a while, there is a chapter that's that way. And
Mhm.
I'll read it again. I'm like, nope, it needs to be that way. But I'm like, your first chapter or two makes a promise to the reader, to me, on what the
Yeah,
length is going
yeah,
to be. And so
yeah.
then I try and stay fairly consistent. But then, yeah, every once in a while, there'll be that one where you're like, yeah, it's shorter or it's a little longer. But I'm like, but it just needs to be for whatever reason. And sometimes you can break them apart or sometimes you can stitch them together. Other times you just can't. So.
Why? They're
Yeah,
just on the page anyway.
exactly.
Oh,
Hopefully, if I'm doing my
yeah,
job,
that's
if
the
I'm
goal.
doing my job.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you're in different writing groups like American Christian fiction writers. You do a lot with My Book Therapy. You do a lot with Kai Libras. Why? You've been writing for a long time. You've won awards. You've hit bestseller lists. Why do you still invest time in writers groups?
Well, I need it, right? This is a very solitary life. I don't have a full-time job. This is my full-time job. I mean, full-time job outside the house. So this is what I do. Well, I need my water cooler time. I need to talk to people. And it helps me hear like what's going on in the industry. I love the business end. I don't always like doing the business end, but I like hearing what's happening in publishing. Plus I learn from people. I wouldn't know anything about Chat GPT if I hadn't have other writers to talk to me about it. I still don't know anything, but at least I'm slightly more aware than I would be if I was on my own. With American Christian Fiction Writers, such a great organization. I was on the board for 18 years or 20 years, 18 years. But I love mentoring new writers because I was that girl. I was the girl at home trying to write and didn't know who to talk to, didn't know how to get help, didn't understand the publishing process. And I really valued the people who came alongside and talked to me and helped me. Davis Bunn was one. And so I just feel like I want to give back. So
I love that. And you've definitely done that for so many writers. And I'll never forget all the years that we were roommates at different ACFW board meeting retreats and things like that, and the different books that we would brainstorm. And there's just a
yeah,
magic
some
that
fun.
happens.
Hope we had some
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. So lots of fun. All right. So here's the last question for you.
All right.
What is the last book you've read in you can decide the time frame, the last 6 months, last year, last 2 years that you read and you went, ugh, I wish I had written this book.
Oh, wow. Usually I go, I wish I had written, I wish I could write like this.
Hmm.
Like it's, but I wish I had written this book. Ah, that's a good one, Kara. I don't know. I'm sure there is one. What did I love? What did I read that I loved so much? I'll tell you. All right, I'm just going to be frank about it. Here it is.
Yeah,
I just read, because in the current book that I'm writing on, see, the book that you're holding up, I'm like, oh yeah, that
I
book.
know. You're like, this was so long ago now.
I was like, what? Yeah, I finished that up long ago. I'm in the new one now. Um, I have flashback scenes. It's not necessarily split time, but it's flashback to when the two protagonists were teenagers and they met the summer of 2009. So I read the To All the Boys I Loved Before series.
Mm,
Loved them. I loved the movies, but I finally dove into the books and I just loved them. And I think there was a part of me that thought it would be so fun to write something like this.
yeah.
Just how she handled them being teenagers. They're a little bit more sweeter than the show, than the movies. But yeah, I really I closed it up and went, dang, that's good.
Yeah. Well, and one of the series that I still love, and it's a ABA, so non-Christian series, but YA is Ally Carter's High Society series, and I call it Ocean's 11 for teens. And
Oh,
it's there's one of the teens is like a billionaire, so they can go anywhere they need to. So that's why I'm like, it's like Ocean's 11 where there's unlimited money.
it's always
But
nice to have a billionaire friend.
absolutely. But one of the things I loved about it is one of the threads is they're going and basically rescuing art that was stolen during World War II. And that's when I went, I wish I'd had this idea first because I'm like, that is so my
Oh,
jam.
you wrote
And
mine,
it,
and so yeah, there you go. I get.
yeah, they're just fun and they're well written and they're sweet. They're not spicy, which sometimes with YA is hard to do or hard to find. And so they're ones that I can recommend to people, but they're just so well done and they're fun. And so it's so fun when you can get that series. And you're like, oh, I wish, but I
Yeah,
didn't. And she did well. So it's all good.
that would have
So
been.
I love that.
Yeah,
All
that's.
right.
I was gonna say that's kind of how I felt. I just felt like I I could see myself in that story. To All the Boys I Loved Before. I could actually see myself in the story, which takes a lot for authors to do.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah,
I love that. That's so fun. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's always a delight to talk to you. And the book
and
is Meet Me at the Starlight, and it comes out July 2nd. Where can people connect with you and learn more about your books?
well, rachelhauck.com. Love to talk to you there, and from there you can find all my socials. I'm on every social media platform, I think, except for what's the new one?
Oh,
Uh,
there's always a new one. But are you on TikTok?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok actually. Under my name, Rachel Hauck, just Rachel Hauck. But also, anybody in the Central Florida area, I will have a book launch for this book July 9th at the Writer's Block bookstore in Winter Park. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful little town, really cool bookstore. So I'd love to see you guys there July 9th, I think at 6 o'clock. But if you go over to my Facebook page, you can see it. And there you can buy a ticket if you want to do that in advance, but I don't think you have to. You can show up. But yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's always good to see you.
you too, Kara. Thanks so much for having me.